That night, if I had just closed that window, maybe my family would still be alive today. My name is Ryan Miller. I used to live with my wife Emily and our 8-year-old daughter Sophie in a quiet neighborhood outside Cleveland. At least, we used to. Everything started when we bought that house. It was huge, too huge for the price. 2 floors, old wooden stairs, a dark forest behind it, and a rusted mailbox in front with the faded name Harper Family. The house was unbelievably cheap, cheap enough to make me suspicious. "Ryan, doesn't this feel a little too good to be true?" Emily whispered as we stepped out of the car. I laughed nervously. Maybe life is finally giving us a break. I wish she had been right. The moment we walked inside, I felt it. That smell, mold, wet wood, and something else underneath it. Something rotten, like the house had been holding its breath for years. The real estate agent, Mr. Collins, rushed through the tour without making eye contact. Every few seconds, he glanced upstairs. "What's up there?" I asked. He froze for half a second. "Just old storage rooms." His voice sounded shaky. Emily squeezed my arm. "I don't like this place." But all I could think about was the price. We were drowning financially. I didn't have many choices left, so we bought the house. Big mistake. The first night seemed normal. Sophie loved her new room. "Dad, I can see the woods from my window," she said excitedly. I smiled. "Just don't stare outside at night. You might see something staring back." She laughed. I didn't, because deep down, I already felt like someone was watching us. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I woke up. Footsteps, slow, heavy, above me. Thud, thud, thud. I looked beside me. Emily was asleep. The footsteps continued. Someone was walking upstairs. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my phone flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The entire house was dark, except for a faint yellow light glowing at the end of the upstairs corridor. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. I slowly climbed the stairs. The footsteps stopped instantly. Every hair on my body stood up. At the end of the hallway, a door slowly creaked shut. Slam. I froze. "Who's there?" Nothing. I forced the door open. The room was empty, just an old rocking chair, dust everywhere, and deep scratch marks covering the walls, like someone had clawed at them for years. Then suddenly, "Ryan!" I almost screamed. Emily stood behind me. "What are you doing up here?" "You didn't close this door?" "What door?" Her face looked genuinely confused. That was the moment I realized something horrifying. We weren't alone in that house. Over the next few days, things got worse. Lights turned on by themselves. The TV would start playing static at night, and Sophie started talking to someone. One evening, I heard her laughing alone in her room. I walked in. "Who are you talking to?" She smiled innocently. "My new friend." "What's her name?" "Lucy." The room suddenly felt freezing cold. "Where is she?" Sophie pointed slowly toward the corner of the room. "She's standing right there." The corner was empty. At least, it looked empty. Emily brushed it off. Kids have imaginary friends. But then Sophie said something that made my blood run cold. "Lucy says this is her house, and she doesn't want us here." That night, Sophie woke up screaming. Emily and I rushed into her room. She was shaking violently. She was watching me. "Who?" I asked. "Lucy, where is she now?" Sophie slowly pointed toward the closet. The door was slightly open. Inside was complete darkness. I walked towards it carefully, my hands trembling. I pulled the door open. Nothing. But written on the back wall in large crooked letters were the words, "Get out." Emily gasped. "Ryan, did you do this? Are you insane?" Sophie started crying. "I told you, Lucy hates us." The next morning, I tried talking to the neighbors. The moment I mentioned our address, their faces changed. One old woman even grabbed my wrist tightly. "You need to leave that house." "Why?" Her eyes filled with fear. "Because that house watches people." Before I could ask another question, she shut the door in my face. That night, a storm hit the neighborhood. Heavy rain, thunder shaking the walls. Around 1 a.m., I heard whispering downstairs. Soft, barely audible, like someone speaking through static. I walked into the living room. The TV was on by itself. White noise filled the screen. Then through the static, I heard a little girl's voice. "Ryan?" My entire body locked up. Then the voice whispered, "Don't look upstairs." My breathing stopped, because at that exact moment, I realized someone was standing on the second-floor balcony above me, watching me. Slowly, I looked up, and there she was, a tall woman standing completely still in the darkness. Her face was pitch black, except for two glowing white eyes. And then she smiled. Emily screamed from behind me, "Ryan, who is that?" But I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. The woman just stood there above us, unnaturally tall, smiling without blinking. Then, suddenly, the lights went out. Everything went black. The house became completely silent. No thunder, no rain, nothing. Then, from upstairs, I heard soft laughing. My blood turned cold. "Ryan," Emily whispered, trembling. "Where's Sophie?" My heart dropped. We ran toward her room. The door was wide open. The window was open too, but Sophie was gone. "Sophie!" I searched the entire house like a madman. Bathroom, kitchen, basement, nothing. Emily was crying hysterically. "Where is she? Where is my baby?" Then, thud, thud, thud. Footsteps upstairs, slow, heavy, like bare feet dragging across wood. I grabbed a flashlight and ran upstairs. At the end of the hallway, the old storage room door was open. A dim yellow light glowed from inside, and I could hear someone humming, a little girl humming. "Sophie?" I whispered. No response. I stepped inside and immediately froze. The walls were covered in photographs, dozens of them, different families, different years. But every photo was taken in the same house. This house. Some pictures were old black and white photographs. Others looked recent, but every single one had one thing in common. In the background, standing silently behind the families, was the same tall black figure, watching, smiling. My hands started shaking. Then I saw the newest picture. Us, me, Emily, and Sophie unloading boxes on the day we moved in, and upstairs in the window, that woman was staring directly at the camera. "Dad!" I turned around instantly. Sophie stood in the corner of the room, but something was wrong. She wasn't moving, wasn't blinking. "Baby, come here slowly." She smiled. "Lucy wants to meet you." Slam! The door shut behind me. The flashlight died instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, right beside my ear, a voice whispered, "You took my house." I spun around, screaming. The flashlight flickered back on, and Sophie was gone. Standing in her place was the woman, closer than before. So close I could smell something rotting. Her face wasn't human. Her mouth stretched too wide. Her white eyes stared directly into mine. Then suddenly, in Sophie's voice, she whispered, "Dad, help me." I stumbled backward in terror. Crack! The wall behind me suddenly split open. Old wood collapsed inward, revealing a hidden room inside the wall. And what was inside made Emily scream. Children's toys, old dolls, tiny shoes, and scattered across the floor, small human skeletons. I nearly threw up. Then I noticed an old journal lying beside them. I picked it up with shaking hands. It belonged to the Harper family. Inside, one sentence was underlined over and over again. Lucy came back wrong. My chest tightened. The next pages explained everything. In 1958, Lucy Harper disappeared in the woods behind the house. 3 days later, she returned. But according to her parents, something else came back wearing Lucy's face. After that, people started disappearing. Neighbors, visitors, entire families, and every night. Lucy would stand upstairs watching people sleep. Eventually, her parents locked her inside that room. But before she died, she told them, "I will never leave this house." Suddenly, a scream echoed upstairs. "Dad!" Sophie. We ran into the hallway. Sophie stood near the upstairs railing, but she wasn't alone. The black figure stood behind her, its long arms wrapped around her shoulders. "Let her go!" I screamed. The creature smiled wider, then slowly, its jaw began stretching open, far wider than humanly possible. Inside its mouth, there was only darkness, and from that darkness came voices. Children crying, people screaming, begging for help, like all its victims were still trapped inside it. Emily froze in horror. I grabbed a metal pipe nearby and swung it as hard as I could. Crack! The creature let out an inhuman screech. The entire house shook violently. Windows shattered, walls cracked, and for the first time, it looked hurt. It released Sophie. I grabbed her instantly. "Run!" We sprinted downstairs, but the moment we reached the front door, her slam! The door locked itself. Then voices filled the house from every direction. "You can't leave!" Suddenly black hands burst through the floorboards. Rotting hands, dozens of them. They grabbed Emily's legs and dragged her down. "Ryan!" I pulled with all my strength, but the hands kept pulling her deeper. Emily screamed in pain. "Take Sophie and run!" "No!" Then suddenly Sophie shouted, "Lucy, stop!" Everything went silent. The hands froze. The creature slowly turned toward Sophie. Sophie was crying. "You're lonely, aren't you?" The creature's smile slowly faded. For the first time, it looked sad. "You don't want people to leave." Sophie stepped closer. Emily screamed, "Sophie, no!" But Sophie kept walking. Then softly she whispered, "We won't hurt you anymore." The creature stared at her silently. Then black tears started pouring from its eyes. Suddenly, the entire house began shaking violently. The ceiling cracked. Walls split apart. The creature screamed so loudly the windows exploded. "Now!" I yelled. I grabbed Emily and Sophie and slammed against the front door. This time, it opened. We ran outside just as the entire house collapsed behind us in flames. Boom! Fire swallowed everything. We stood there, shaking in the rain, watching the house burn to the ground. Police later discovered dozens of human remains buried beneath the property. Families who had vanished over the decades. But they never found Lucy's body, not even ashes. We left Ohio forever, moved to a new home in Portland. For a while, things felt normal again, until one night, at exactly 2:13 a.m., 3 slow knocks came from Sophie's bedroom window. Thud, thud, thud. Sophie looked at me with tears in her eyes, then whispered, "Dad, if Lucy died in that fire, then who's standing outside?" I didn't want to look outside. Every instinct in my body screamed not to, but Sophie was crying. Emily was frozen beside me, and those knocks kept coming. Thud, 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 slow, patient, like whoever or whatever was outside knew we were terrified. I forced myself toward the window. My hands shook as I grabbed the curtain. "Ryan, don't!" Emily whispered. Too late. I pulled the curtain open. Nothing. Just darkness, rain falling softly outside, an empty backyard. I let out a shaky breath. Then a pale face suddenly slammed against the glass. Emily screamed. I stumbled backward. It was Lucy, or at least it looked like Lucy. Her skin was unnaturally white. Her mouth stretched into that impossible grin, and her glowing eyes stared directly into mine. Then slowly, she raised one finger and pointed behind us. My blood froze because Sophie was gone. Again, the bedroom door creaked open by itself. Cold air rushed through the hallway, and from downstairs, we heard Sophie humming the same tune from the house in Ohio. "No," Emily whispered. We ran downstairs. The living room lights flickered violently. TV static blasted through the room, and standing in front of the screen was Sophie, motionless, facing away from us. "Sophie?" I said carefully. She didn't answer. Then the TV screen changed. An old home video appeared. Black and white footage. A family standing outside the Harper house in 1962. Laughing. Smiling. Then slowly, the camera zoomed toward the upstairs window, and there she was, watching. But this time, the creature turned toward the camera and smiled. The screen suddenly glitched. Then words appeared across the television. "She followed you home." Emily burst into tears. "Why is this happening to us?" Then Sophie spoke, but it wasn't her voice. "They opened the door!" Every light in the house exploded at once. Darkness swallowed everything. And then something grabbed my ankle from under the couch. I crashed onto the floor, screaming. Cold fingers wrapped around my leg, pulling hard. I kicked wildly until the grip vanished. Then I heard Emily screaming upstairs. "Ryan, help me!" I ran toward the staircase, but halfway up, I stopped breathing. The hallway ceiling was covered with people. Dozens of human figures crawling upside down like spiders. Their heads twisted backward, white eyes glowing in the dark, watching me, smiling. Then all of them whispered together, "She belongs to us now." I ran through them anyway. The moment I reached Sophie's room, I saw Emily pinned against the wall, invisible hands holding her in place, and standing in the center of the room was Lucy. Except now, she looked different, bigger, taller, like the thing inside her was finally showing its true form. Its skin moved unnaturally, like thousands of faces were trapped beneath it, screaming silently. Then the creature looked directly at me and smiled. "You should never have left the house alive." Its voice echoed from every corner of the room at once. I grabbed a lamp and threw it. The bulb shattered against its face. The creature didn't even flinch. Instead, the walls began bleeding. Dark liquid poured from the ceiling, and slowly, faces started forming inside the walls. Missing people, children, families, all trapped, all staring at me. One of them whispered, "Burn it." Another whispered, "The woods." Then suddenly I remembered something from the journal. One final page I hadn't fully read. There was a sentence written repeatedly. "It lives beneath the trees." My heart stopped. The house was never the source. The forest was. That thing had attached itself to the land long before Lucy ever disappeared. And when the house burned, it simply followed the nearest living family. Us. Suddenly, Sophie began floating off the floor. Emily screamed hysterically. Black smoke poured from Sophie's mouth as her eyes rolled white. The creature stretched its arms toward her. "She will open the door fully." I didn't understand what that meant until the bedroom walls split open, and behind it, there was no wall anymore. Only darkness, endless darkness, and inside it, thousands of glowing eyes opened at once, watching us, waiting. Something enormous moved deep inside the void, something far bigger than Lucy. Then all the voices whispered together, "Let us in." The room shook violently. Windows exploded outward. Trees outside bent unnaturally toward the house, and Sophie screamed, not in fear, but in agony. Then suddenly, she looked directly at me. For one brief second, it was really her again. "Dad." Tears rolled down her face. "Please don't let them take me." And then the creature smiled, because behind Sophie, more hands were beginning to crawl out of the darkness.